Thank you. Maybe can I leave my notes on the computer here? Okay, I won't go. Okay, thank you. When I was preparing for this session, I thought I'll call the paper I prepared Insights from Greece. Now I think it's lessons to learn from the Greek austerity trap. And the first lesson, it seems, comes from Madame Lagarde, giving her address in Tokyo at the annual IMF World Bank meetings, where she said, "One lesson is clear from history. Reducing public debt is incredibly difficult without growth. High debt, in turn, makes it harder to get growth." So, I mean, as the fiscal multiplier issue was raised, the message is clear. And, of course, being Greek, okay, you don't know whether to laugh or, cry. But the message is governments around the world, the European Commission, the economics orthodoxy, using the wrong fiscal multipliers made gross GDP wrong forecasts and systematically underestimated the backlash on growth. Now the IMF seems to be admitting a blunder. Tell that to the Greeks. Is this a sign of real policy shift, or is it just a way to handy way to say, oh, cover up? It's early to say. It's an important empirical finding, but right now it seems to indicate a change of mood rather than a policy change. Because coming back to Greece, Lagarde in Tokyo cautioned against the front-loading cuts and taxes, advocated more time in Greece. It's a marathon, not a sprint, she said. In Greece, however, reality contests rhetoric. Right now, with wartime recession levels, Greece is forced, blackmailed really, to front-load billions of additional austerity for 2003 to compensate for losses deriving from higher than expected recession. So, I mean, it really seems this is just, a change of mood. Now, the dominant narrative invokes Greece as a cautionary tale about the dangers of deficits. I think Greece instead provides a cautionary tale about the hazards of austerity and express deficit reduction in depressed economies. Greece really epitomizes the austerity trap. It is entrapped in a vicious circle where austerity generates recession, and then you have unemployment followed by deeper recession, and you have economic growth killed and social cohesion severely tested. You also have a severe institutional disempowerment because the austerity agenda in the IMF mindset that's being exported all over is coupled with deep, far-fetched, structural labor market reforms, and those compound the economic disempowerment of workers and households. So this shock therapy in Greece, empirically and visibly has derailed Greece's debt beyond sustainability. It has destabilized the political system and hurt the economy at a very huge human and social cost. Of course, Greece's woes are rooted in domestic imbalances and chronic endemic flows. No one can exonerate Greek politics from the sins of clientelism, rent-seeking, corruption, nepotism, but assuming the best government, ceteris paribus, this self-defeating program of austerity and adjustment wouldn't work anywhere. I think even Mrs. Merkel couldn't really make it work. Every economic indicator has worsened. Since 2008, we are mired in deep recession, expected to touch by the end of the year 7%, and cumulatively since 2008 is 20. By 2014, it will reach 25. This is wartime recession. This is not sustainable. It's one of the worst economic slumps in history. It's far more than Argentina had in the 2000s. So are Greeks not really trying hard enough? They try to adjust by recession. What are they doing? Are they a bad shish kebab that should be vomited out of Europe, as Jeremy Paxman said over at the BBC? Are they lazy? No, they're not. They work the longest hours in OECD, and second only to South Korea. And they've been terribly hurt, but they try. They try. The most drastic reduction in primary budget deficit in Europe over the last 30 years was achieved in Greece thanks to impoverishing Greeks, and this is also in a very good report by the Bank of Ireland. Our budget deficit narrowed down sharply, it beat the Troika targets. Unit labor costs, another obsession, fell by 9.1%. The minimum wage was slashed by 22%, and 32% for the young people to subsistence levels, really. You have 1.25 million people unemployed, 1 out of 4 Greeks, and 1 out of 2 young Greeks are unemployed. I mean, economic analysis only makes sense if you look at the real impact on people's lives. So you have the economic crisis, it develops into a social crisis, and then it goes on to a humanitarian crisis. 30% of households have now shifted below the poverty line. You have malnutrition in children. Now, 250,000 people really rely on relief work to get a hot meal. And austerity widens inequality, and the more vulnerable are the hardest hit. And of course, like, you know, if you take the tax evasion issue, I mean, Greeks pay taxes, but 80% of the taxes are paid by the salaried and the pensioners. The rest is, you know, paid, okay, by farmers and small businesses, and the rest is not paid at all, but this is big money. Now, the austerity trap is perhaps best illustrated by the spiraling evolution of our sovereign debt. When the whole thing began, it stood at 128% of GDP. Now, the government, the new budget draft for 2030, sees it 2012, 170% of GDP, and it will rise until the end of the program to 185 maybe. This is a Fitch rating. So given current conditions, this is unsustainable, and this money doesn't really benefit Greece. All we're getting now actually goes back to servicing the rising, you know, borrowing costs and our debts. And I mean, the argument that throw no more money to this bottomless pit doesn't make sense, because this is a historically unique pit that whatever you throw into it, it comes back to you with interest. Like, I mean, look at what Germany has been making. The numbers are really astonishing. So austerity also has a twin. It's structural reforms, as I said, and what's been doing in Greece is unimaginable. Mario Draghi's dream has started in Greece. The social model has been, you know, dead in Greece. Every ILO core convention has been trampled on. The social dialogue process is killed. And of course, you have privatizing all the systems of social protection, health, education, and now water, which is the big issue also in Europe. So I think this is something that we should be very seriously, you know, take into account, because it's not only Greece, as I said, it's spreading out. It's the agenda the European Commission has been implementing since 2010, but it really started 2 decades ago, and it was really implemented in the countries that broke away from the communist bloc in Southern, Central, and Southeastern Europe. So it was happening there, this dismantlement of labor institutions. I would need like 3 sessions to tell you the institutional overhaul, but it's complete, and it has taken our industrial relations system that was far from perfect, but it was working, like 2 decades back, quantitatively and qualitatively. I mean, the concept of collective democratic representation, social partnership is gone. And I'll give you an example. And I mean, in February, the Troika was insisting to cut the minimum wage, as I said. This is another obsession in the private sector. Then the social partners, 3 employer organizations, and my organization got together, wrote a letter, wrote a memorandum, said, okay, leave the private sector. You know, we'll find a way out of this, of non-wage costs. That was the big issue ourselves. But let social dialogue work. We oppose your proposals. And it was thrown into the dust bin. So, I mean, this is all the hypocrisy that goes, because I've met with my European colleagues, with, you know, the Barroso commissioners, Olli Rehn, Van Rompuy, and they were giving us booklets about how to conduct social dialogue. In Greece now, an employer, a small business, which is the backbone of our economy, can legally set up something called an association of persons. And then he can enter into negotiations with them, sign a contract, whatever that contract is, and this is binding for the rest of the workers in that enterprise. The trend is to individualize the whole thing and kill off sectoral representation. But, you know, austerity is economically hazardous. It is socially reckless, but it is also politically dangerous, as we're seeing in Greece. We have democracy overruled by a de facto IMF Brussels administration personified by the Troika inspectors who just, you know, email demands to ministers, and these are summarily incorporated and turned into legislation. The parliament is disempowered. Politicians discredited, and society is really in a state of shocked confusion. As the social fabric disintegrates, as you play with institutions and you just, you know, trample on them, you leave a void, and the void in Greece is being filled by a neo-Nazi fascist party, the Golden Dawn Party, which now in the last poll seems to be getting the third place, and these guys are no joke. They celebrate Hitler's birthday. It's nothing like, you know, we've seen in Europe. They salute, they form Sturmtruppen, they harass and, you know, use tremendous violence. They kill immigrants. So I think this may be one of the most critical lessons to draw out of the austerity trap when all is said and done. So is there a way forward from crisis to opportunity? Yes, we should be optimistic and like salmon swim upstream. Europe has been awarded a Nobel Prize. The truth is that internal peace in Europe has been wounded. So we must work on that, and we must get social cohesion back together. But this cannot be done with unemployment levels and the austerity trap. It can't be done under the new economic governance, which really institutionalizes austerity and structural reforms all around Europe, taking wages as the main mechanism for adjustment, and also imposing a permanent state of emergency where all rights, all social rights can be suspended, you know, in the name of managing fiscal deficits. And this does great harm to the European social model, the institutions that sustained the post-war dream, the partnership, the social model, the acquis communautaire. So this must be prevented. There's a big job to be done for progressive workers. We, as the trade unions, among others, we've been very actively advancing the idea of a social compact to accompany and really modify the austerity, the fiscal compact. So, I mean, this is based on fostering social dialogue, institutions, collective bargaining, sustainable growth, green jobs, employment, all, you know, the agenda that, you know, progressive ideas stand for. I'm finishing. And to support these demands, on the 12th of November, we're going to have a European joint day of action. Every trade union in their own country, we will be doing something. As far as Greece is concerned, we've survived a dictatorship, civil war, 4 years of German occupation, migration, famine, everything you can think of. We may be destroyed, but as Ernest Hemingway says, we won't be defeated. Thanks.